Hello, and welcome to the Radiant Mission podcast. My name is Rebecca Twomey, and I'm here with my amazing sister and co-host, Rachel Smith.
Hello.
Yeah, we are on a mission to encourage and inspire others as they navigate through this life and the relationship with Christ. I'm so excited for you guys to be here today. Thank you for tuning in. We are a faith-based podcast, so we're approaching issues with that biblical lens or biblical hat on. And as we rise from the depths of birth, fertility, infertility, and loss, we're dialing our lens in a little bit more as well. And we're going to be talking about health today. 2 weeks ago, Rachel shared her struggle with secondary infertility, and she briefly mentioned some of the pieces to her health journey. She shared that she met Paula, who she took a test that revealed she had extremely high estrogen. And that allowed Rachel to go down this path of healing that ultimately led to a very sweet surprise at the end. And if you didn't hear the sweet surprise, I'm going to make you listen to that episode. 2 weeks ago, there was a surprise. So
Listen till the end.
listen till the end. Hope you don't miss it. But Ray, we skipped a lot in between.
Yeah.
So bring us back on your journey. What did you discover and what did you change about your life? You know, there were things that you changed with your food, supplements, all that. So talk to us about what that looked like and what you learned.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go through kind of the testimony of essentially the second half of my what infertility led me to, which, because I rejected the allopathic way of going about things, then it opened up this door for me to find um a in my opinion a better way. And
Mm-hmm. So what did allopath track told you? You're having a problem with your fertility. Let's blow your tubes out and clean them out and put you on Clomid.
That's a way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, essentially to take a medication. And
Take a medication.
so
Yeah, and also not take. You told this doctor, I'm having these other potential issues. I think I might have a hormone problem, but he said, don't worry about it. And you moved on from that. So that's the difference we're talking about here, right?
right, yes, exactly. So I didn't know it at the time that I was just having that, that gut feeling or that intuition from the Holy Spirit that this was not the way for me, and instead sought out the holistic path, which I would just say from everything I've learned from healing naturally is at the core, it's to find the root cause of what is causing a symptom. And infertility is a symptom. That's what one of the first things Paula told me that I said last time we discussed this, that the infertility was not the problem, it was a sign of the problem. And so the first clue that we got was the results from my Dutch hormone panel, which was that my estrogen was very high. I have what's considered estrogen dominance, and this is actually extremely common in women. And she suspected a a gut issue because the microbiome in our guts is partly responsible for metabolizing excess estrogen. And also my liver was it was a sign that my liver was struggling to process out, because it is also responsible for detoxing out estrogen. Essentially, the way she looked at it is functions in your body are not working properly right now for you to have this high of estrogen, because when everything is working properly, then our bodies, when we produce estrogen, we cycle out the excess that we don't need. So that was the first kind of clue that she suggested. And because she is a registered dietitian and specializes in hormone health, of course, her method of healing issues with hormones is going to be starting with the diet. And so I remember what she said to me is that these were her words: the low hanging fruit is going to be alcohol. And it kind of made me laugh. And when I told my husband later, he really laughed because I used to be a wine drinker. I love wine, love having a bottle on the weekend. And and my very favorite wine that I would always drink, the brand is called Low Hanging Fruit.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So
Isn't
it
that
was
couldn't have been more perfect, right?
no, it really was because I had a gut feeling over, I told the story of how we got here a year and a
Mm-hmm.
half, and I was still drinking almost every weekend, if not every weekend. And I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say I would like drink to excess, but what Paula told me is even one single drink once a week is too much for your liver, because clearly your
Wow.
liver is not functioning properly, that
Mm.
it's not even detoxing out the estrogen. So if you even have one drink, your liver's going to go to that to process that, and it
Wow.
just ties it all up. So that was the first nutrition advice that she gave me, and I really needed that wake up call,
Yeah.
because when you don't have alcohol problems, you're like, what's the problem with it? But it's incredibly unhealthy for us. It's incredibly inflammatory, and inflammation causes problem in the gut as well,
Mm-hmm.
along with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways,
That I do want to take a minute to kind of focus on this for a second, because this
yeah.
is something that, I know we've technically moved past fertility, right? But
Right.
at the same time, we're on it. We're always we're always on that topic. Alcohol can definitely impact fertility, as we're hearing with you, Ray. And I also had a friend that was having difficulty conceiving and was told all kinds of things like, oh, you probably just have PCOS. And it wasn't until both partners stopped drinking, not just one, because that's oftentimes the thing that happens when we're trying to conceive, right? Is it's the woman who's doing all of the
Right.
quitting of everything, like, I'm not going to drink any wine or eat anything bad, or I'm going to do this to get healthy. And a lot of times the husband isn't doing the same things. And both people you're doing it together, right? It's important for both partners because it affects sperm quality too,
Right. Mm-hmm.
drinking alcohol. So if you
Yeah.
know someone that's trying to conceive and having a hard time, you may want to ask them. Although it's a pretty hard thing to have a conversation with someone else about, right? Like, because I remember us having some conversations about this too. And I always felt like it's a tough topic or a tough thing to ask somebody, to be like, hey, do you think maybe you probably like maybe it could be wine? Because
Yeah.
how do you say that to somebody and have them be like, get off my back, man?
Yeah. It really was because I had this like feeling it was a problem even before I ever talked to Paula. I did have, because I do remember you and I talking about that at times of like, I should really like not drink at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I got stuck in this cycle of I would not drink at all. And, we're trying to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And then my period would come, and I had extremely bad PMS from the estrogen, which I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would just make me so emotional. And I would just be like, forget it. What's the point? And then I would go back to drinking wine for a few days. And then I would get back on, okay, now my period is over and we're trying again. And it was this cycle that felt so unhealthy.
Mm.
And I told Paula about that when she said that to me. And what was really helpful for me to just stop altogether is she pointed out that me craving the alcohol when I was getting my period is actually was partly a symptom of the estrogen dominance, because my estrogen was so high there were aspects of it of like I needed a coping mechanism
Mm,
essentially
mhm.
because of like the surging at certain parts in my cycle. It's like my brain subconsciously was seeking out a way to cope with this hormonal imbalance that I didn't
That's
know about.
very interesting. I saw someone in the health community talking about this just last night, that if addictions are often, or people being pulled into things that are addiction type things like food, alcohol, drugs,
Yeah.
stuff like that, are often a coping mechanism for deeper problems and for other things that are going on inside your body. If you feel like you need something to cope, perhaps it's digging in to see why. What are the symptoms
Right.
of what you're experiencing?
Right.
And I
Yes.
can I can totally relate to that too. I know what that feels like when I had that copper toxicity and I didn't know that's what it was. I felt like my heart was racing all the time and I just didn't feel right. And I felt like I needed to find something to help me feel better because I
Right.
didn't know what was wrong with me. It
Yes.
wasn't until I actually found out what it was that it became clear. And I'm like, all right, I'll get it out. And I didn't need to seek any more coping mechanisms because the actual root cause had been solved.
Right.
So, if this sounds like you listening in, that you're feeling pulled to some sort of coping mechanism, maybe it's chocolate, which is can
Yeah.
be a big one. People said that to me when after Ben, I was craving chocolate a lot. And people were like, you probably have a magnesium deficiency,
Yeah. Yeah.
which they're probably right. And I take magnesium now.
Well,
So
although if you are eating a really good quality dark chocolate, it is a great source of magnesium and it can be a health food. I mean,
that's
obviously not
that's
to like
true.
eat it in excess.
I think that's
Um,
really why my craving was solved, because I just ate the chocolate.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was the first thing I did and I didn't have a problem cutting it out. It was, I was very committed that I'm going to do this.
Oh yeah, you had next level commitment on.
Yeah.
People are going to
Yes.
hear about your
It only
commitment
gets more
level.
extreme. If alcohol was not the hardest thing I cut out.
It wasn't. It
Not by a
wasn't.
long shot, and I'll get into what the hardest thing was. So, what Paula recommended from there, and this is what I love about her as a nutritionist, is she's very practical about how you do things living your life. And the first and she knows that I have a history of eating disorders. So she was very careful and gentle with me about, you know, not having any super strong restrictions.
Mhm.
But instead, it was more about adding in than taking away. So adding in more vegetables because vegetables are very gut healthy, and adding in more fermented foods because we wanted to work on my gut microbiome,
Mhm.
and adding just it just felt like it was more about not restriction. And when you add in healthier foods, then you don't have the space to be eating junk anyways.
That's a good
So
way of putting it. How long
right.
does it take to rebuild your microbiome in your gut?
I don't know. That'd be a good question for us to ask Paula
That's
when
what.
we have her on. So we'll have to do that because I don't, I think it takes months. I think it takes
Okay.
a long time. It's not something that definitely happens overnight with one kombucha, which but I think it takes, just like it takes a long time because there's billions of bacteria in there, both good and bad. And so
Mhm.
having an imbalance essentially means that you don't have as many good as bad, and the bad are taking over. Or you could have a parasite. Parasites are way more common than I think any of us realize. We could all have parasites right now. We might
Oh
all,
yeah.
we
Yeah.
probably do.
Oh, definitely.
So
Especially if you're eating ham. No.
yeah, there you go. So yeah, we really were focusing, like I was focused on eating more fruits and vegetables. And I also on my own cut out refined sugar for the most part. I was not extreme. Like if I was at, something and there was a cake, I would have a little bit. but I really, I really like, especially focus on changing my breakfast and my lunch to be super gut nourishing.
Mm-hmm. Start off
And
your day the right way.
right, exactly. And then dinner, I would just, eat what my family ate and always tried to have a vegetable with it. So, but next to that, we also wanted to work on detoxing my liver. And I could not quote all of the technical ways that Paula explained this to me, but it's like opening up your liver pathway two before opening up the first pathway. I don't know what it all means. There's pathways in our livers apparently. And that's another thing that sure she could enlighten us a lot more on when we have her on. But essentially, there are certain amino acids that can help a lot with detoxing our liver. So I was taking a few different supplements that included these amino acids. One is glutamine, and another supplement I was taking was specifically good for estrogen detox.
Mm-hmm.
It has a substance. I'm just going to mention it as a side real quick. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail about it because I'm not super educated on it. But if anyone who has been diagnosed with estrogen dominance, they might have heard of this before. It's a supplement called It's apparently a super concentrate of cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, because there's some kind of substance
Oh,
in that
the
that
mustard family.
yeah, something about it. But like I said, I I'm not, there's a whole ton of detail about DIM. It's just very common when a woman finds out that she has excess estrogen that she might be research and will come upon taking DIM. And
Uh-huh.
I was interested in trying that. And so I did. So here's the crazy thing is Paul, this is the importance of working with a professional anytime you're supplementing, even if it's natural stuff, because I ended up having a really terrible reaction. And it was funny because Paula, she was very specific that I start with one supplement. And if I tolerated it well over a week, then I start that second um,
Mm-hmm.
female one that included the DIM. And the day after I started that one, I had the worst migraine of my entire life. It was
Mm.
so bad. I almost threw up on the floor of a grocery store.
Oh no.
And then I almost passed out driving my kids home.
Oh no.
And
Not
I
good.
I texted Paula and I was like, man, I have the worst migraine of my life. Like, could it be something about those supplements? And she's like, when did you start the second one? And I was like, yesterday, or might have been the day before or something. It was within 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, stop taking that immediately. You're having a reaction to it.
Mm.
And so then what she said is that some women do not tolerate DIM.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that that's an important aside, because if I hadn't known Paula, because but knew, found out I had high estrogen from a test from a doctor or something,
Mm-hmm.
researching on my own probably would have taken that on my own
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe not realize that's what I was having such a poor reaction to.
That's a really, really great point. I haven't even talked to you about this yet, but I've been trying that I've been trying some different supplements lately, and I think one of them is messing with me. I actually stopped taking everything because I want to do what you did, which is phase them in to see, because
Right.
I've been feeling when I was taking all these supplements at once, kind of irritable and having more headaches and just not feeling right in general.
Yeah.
And I think it is one of the things that I was taking. So, and everything that I'm taking is natural stuff.
Right. And that's what's really important is just because something is not a prescription medication, just because it's natural or it comes from a plant, or it's something naturally occurring in our body, it doesn't mean that it can't greatly affect us,
Exactly.
especially given our genetic makeup, which I'm going to get
And
into
yeah,
in
and
a second.
everybody's so different. And,
Right.
you
And
know,
this is why I really am a big advocate about working with a registered dietitian, especially one who has that holistic mindset. Actually, I mean, I will plug Paula at the end of this episode and definitely next week when we have her on, is that if anyone is interested in, you know, any part of my journey and possibly looking into that themselves, is Paula takes virtual clients. So
oh
she
yeah. And not
absolutely could
even
help
just for
anyone.
exactly what Rachel's dealing with, but anything hormone related.
Yeah.
She
And
specializes
she
in
doesn't.
women that are experiencing menopause too, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And she doesn't just have female clients. She knows it all, but she's just really an expert on
Hormones
health.
and how they
So,
work. Yeah.
so yeah. So from there, this is what it was about a month. And so I stopped taking that one and I was only taking the amino acid supportive supplement that is supposed to help with liver detoxification. And I was on that for about a month. And during that time, I felt like I had a really clear perspective that healing is not linear. And
Mm.
people will often say this, especially when you're getting to the root cause of something or figuring out, you know, what's going on in your body and how to heal and healing naturally, is you don't feel better and better and better every day. You have like one day you're better, one day you're way worse. Like it's just like it's like a roller coaster. It's like up and down.
Mhm.
And as the weeks went by, what it started to feel like for me is it started to feel like that state I was at of when I would PMS, I was there all the time. Like I was so irritable. I was so snappy. I was really emotional. And again, this is what is helpful about working with a practitioner is I told Paula how I was feeling. I'm like, I just feel like I'm in a constant state of PMS now. I'm like, could it be, is this how it is to detox your liver? It like feels like I'm like detoxing a demon out of my liver.
Mm.
Like it just, I didn't feel good, but I was trying so hard and I was doing so much. And she said, I want you to, are you still taking that, the first supplement, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, I want you to stop taking that one. And I really want us to do genetic testing.
Mm.
I suspect that you have a gene mutation that a huge amount of the population has. It's not uncommon, that affects your ability to metabolize glutamine. And that while that is a amino acid and it isn't necessarily bad, and that this supplement would work for a ton of people, if you have this gene mutation, that it could be the reason you're feeling this way.
And
And
not for nothing, my doctor had suspected that too. You were here for one of Ben's appointments, remember?
right, yeah,
And
that's true.
he suspected something different, but he did suspect something gene related, that potentially you could need methylated vitamins or something like that.
Right, he suspected what's called MTHFR, and I was
Yes.
hearing that a lot. And I even asked Paul about that because if you're in the natural holistic communities in the past 2 years, you've probably heard of MTHFR. It's like the most popular talked about gene
Yeah.
mutation right now, but there's
Yeah.
actually a ton.
Yeah.
And so I was interested in being tested for that because I was
Hot
reading
topic
about
right
it.
now for sure.
Right. I was reading about it. Apparently, people who have that mutation are more likely to have reactions to vaccines than I have in the past.
Mhm.
So, anyways, I think Paula probably prefers to do genetic testing like first thing with a client, but I, you know, all of these tests do cost money. So you kind of have to prioritize where you're going to put your money when you're going down a path of healing like this.
Yeah.
And so I maybe put this one off. But then when she said that, I was like, okay, let's do this. And I really did want to know if I had MTHFR. And so we got those tests back, and it actually revealed I do not have the MTHFR gene mutation, at least the popular one. There are a few different kinds. But what I did have is what's called the GAD1 gene mutation, which is exactly what she suspected.
Mm-hmm.
It's responsible for converting glutamine or glutamate into GABA, which literally affects your brain and the way it processes things,
Mm-hmm.
like causing depression and anxiety and when you're exposed to this. So what this means, it means a lot more than me just taking a supplement and to avoid that supplement. This actually includes monosodium glutamate or MSG, which is one of the most common food enhancers that's in probably 80% of processed foods on our supermarket shelves.
Mm-hmm.
Fast food is MSG. And essentially, it would make my brain more excitable. And it indicates that having this gene mutation, essentially, I mean, I have in my notes, like, and this is what she told me when she read my results, that it means you have the phenotype to be a more anxious person, which that was really interesting to me because I have experienced anxiety literally since I can remember as a child. Always, like, my brain would go to places of anxiousness. And so really what hit me having these results, and there was a lot more that we went over too. There was like all kinds of mutations all over the place. And all of us have different gene mutations. Like none of us have pure genetics anymore. But it really put so much together for me on, I always felt like the reason I had anxiety is because my brain was broken. And while I was healed of so much because of my relationship with the Lord, it's like it's still sometimes would come up and rear its ugly head, or linger there. And essentially what I was learning from this is that I live in an environment that is triggering these processes that affect my mental health through what I'm putting in my body.
Yeah.
Literally through nutrition.
Yeah.
So you can, if you know this stuff about yourself, you can manage symptoms that you never imagined you could manage just through your diet. That I can avoid MSG to help support my mental health, because that is, one of, it would contribute to a trigger of my brain being able to properly process these, chemicals that then lead to anxiety and depression. So I had another gene mutation that also predisposes me to immune system issues, and just the way that my immune system responds to viruses. And that one was very interesting and notable as well. So there was a lot more to that, but I felt like I really appreciated this information. I like education and to be educated on everything, but it was like I was learning about my body in a very intricate way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
can we pause for a second
Yeah.
to talk about MSG, and then we'll move on, because everybody thinks that MSG. Oh yeah, I saw something about it being in Chinese food. Sis, it ain't in Chinese food. It's in everything.
Yes, it literally is.
Literally, I'm sorry, but even the Lord's chicken,
Oh, yes.
Chick-fil-A, MSG in their products, every fast food place, go look at the ingredients that make up their foods and you'll see monosodium glutamate in it. Cream of mushroom soup has
Yes. Campbell's
monosodium.
anyway. You can get a different brand without it.
Well, yeah, Campbell's
Yeah.
traditional. I'm talking about. If you get
Yeah, because what it does, even if you don't have the gene mutation that I have, which literally means MSG messes up your brain chemistry and causes very serious issues. The whole reason they put MSG into food is because it's a food enhancer. It makes food more addictive.
because
It
it's
tricks your
speaking
brain
to
into
your
thinking it
brain
tastes
neural
better.
pathways, right?
Yes, it's honestly, I feel like it's a crime against humanity that they put. It's like, don't even get me started. Um, but to keep us moving, keep this train on the tracks.
Yeah, just look at the
So,
ingredients on things. That's all I wanted to say,
yes,
really.
yeah. So, around this time, so this is like months and months are in between all these conversations and all these tests, and I'm trucking on with my healthy eating. And once I did go off of those supplements, I did start feeling better. And so we were just going to have to take my liver detox in a more gentle way than just, pushing a supplement in. And around this time, I had a friend who also had dealt with infertility, and she told me about this holistic nurse practitioner that she had seen. And after a year and a half of her not being able to get pregnant, she was pregnant within 3 months of seeing this woman. And so I was like, well, let me just go have a conversation with her too. Like, I felt ready for that because I was really working on my health. I was learning so much, and from Paula and nutrition and doing my own research, that I finally felt like ready to investigate that aspect and at least just have a conversation with her. And this woman, her background was actually as a midwife, and so she really had a lot of experience on counseling women with infertility and getting pregnant. And so in my first conversation with her, it was so helpful that I had all of this testing already done and all this information. I was a very informed patient. Like, I don't know if anybody knew more about their body than I did in this first conversation. And she, very similarly to Paula, sat there for an hour asking me questions. It was like back and forth of just question after question of things that were so interesting. Of course, no doctor has ever asked me. Like, she kept asking me, have you had any hair issues? Have you had any skin issues? Any muscle issues? Or she didn't keep asking me that, but like as she was kind of berating me with
She
all
was
these different,
working through questions
right. She was
and
kind of
talking, verbally talking to you, not like, here's a form, fill this out.
right, exactly. And as she was doing this, she was essentially putting a puzzle together in her mind with the information that I already had.
Mm.
And, you know, initially, so when she asked me about skin and hair, and she said any muscle issues, and as soon as she said that, I said, well, I have something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which affects my muscles. And as soon as she said that, she goes, oh, I know what this is. That totally changes how I'm going to treat you. And I was like, really? What? What is it? What is it? And she said, you have an autoimmune issue because Ehlers-Danlos is triggered by something autoimmune. And I
Okay.
was like, really? And I'm not really going to get into what that is right now because it's not really pertinent to my health, but we can talk about it more one day. Anyway,
No
it's
time for that right now. Basically, Rachel can bend all of her fingers backwards and touch her wrist.
right,
Nothing,
exactly.
nothing to see here.
It's a muscular connective tissue issue, and I literally never think about it because it doesn't seem to affect my life, but it can be very serious. And I never mentioned it I didn't even mention it to Paula because I had no idea that it would
Yeah.
indicate any type of autoimmune issue. She also was very clued in when I told her that I had a reaction to the chicken pox jab when I was a child and I got shingles from it. And I've since had shingles like 20 times in my life. That also was like, that indicates an autoimmune issue, the fact that your body would react like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, because of this, she wanted to do a bunch of blood work for all kinds of things, including autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's, Epstein-Barr virus, Lyme, and a few others. That was just based on my symptoms. And with the estrogen, that's what she was suspecting.
Mm-hmm.
So my results came back that I had a type of Lyme disease. She explained to me that there's actually multiple types of Lyme disease, and they don't all come from a tick bite. Some of them can be from a parasite, or just you don't even know where you got it from.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was it was minor. So it's not the very serious one. And it was at a very low level,
Mm-hmm.
like not at the level that it should be causing huge issues. But I also came back that I have chronic Epstein-Barr virus and it was currently active.
Mm-hmm.
So, Epstein-Barr virus, most people probably know it by the shortened nickname of mono, or the kissing disease, is what, people kind of call it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because it's easily passed through saliva.
right. Yes, it's not only passed through kissing, it just gets called that for some
Sure,
reason.
you could share a cup with somebody or
Right, exactly. So this was important because I didn't even
yeah, who
think
are
to
you
ever
smooching?
yeah. I didn't even think to ever mention it to anyone, but I had mono when I was a freshman in high school.
Yeah.
You
So you were
know,
like 15, 14
right.
years old?
I was like 15, and I had gone from being homeschooled my whole life to public school for the first time, freshman year of high school. And I did not know that I got mono until 2 years later, when I had a particularly terrible outbreak of shingles. And mom brought me to the doctor because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
why does she keep getting shingles? By that point, I had it a handful of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember them doing blood work and mentioning, your immune system doesn't seem to react normally to things. And also, when did you have mono? And me and mom were like, she's never had mono. And they were like, well, you have a ton of antibodies for it. So you've definitely had it.
Mm.
And then we thought back 2 years before, when I first started high school, I would come home from school and get in bed and sleep all afternoon, get up and eat dinner, and then go to bed.
Mm.
And I remember thinking at that time that that's just how tired you are when you go to public school, because I had no experience. And I think mom thought that too, that it was just an adjustment. And it was like that for a long time, like months.
Uh-huh.
But in actuality, Epstein-Barr virus, it's a very serious virus. It's causes fatigue. Some people have very swollen lymph nodes, sore throat. It's very serious. And there isn't really a treatment for it other than to support your immune system. But you are supposed to essentially be on bed rest when
Mm.
you actively have it. And instead, I was going to school every day and then just coming home and sleeping. So, anyways, I found out I had mono at a much later time. And what happens is this virus, for some people, it can essentially go chronic in your system, which means that it has the ability for whatever reason to reactivate. And that kind of goes back to that gene mutation that I mentioned, that I had one that affects my immune system, that essentially predisposed me to have a virus go chronic in my system.
Mm-hmm.
So my NP explained to me that Epstein-Barr, she's seeing it a lot more go chronic because it's being triggered by the Rona. It can be triggered by other viruses. It can be triggered by very stressful life events. It can be triggered by previous pregnancies. That essentially my immune system wasn't holding that in check anymore. It wasn't keeping it in remission. It had activated enough to essentially be wreaking havoc in my body again. And what's so interesting is that this was research I did on my own, Epstein-Barr, viruses usually stay in your system and your body builds the antibodies so that if you're ever encounter it again, it recognizes it because you have antibodies. Well, this virus usually resides on the liver. And so I thought that it was very interesting because it was absolutely the reason why my body could not detox out the estrogen, because it was so busy fighting this virus I didn't know that I had. So her treatment, which I was familiar with because of my wonderful friend and registered dietitian, Paula, is something called the autoimmune protocol, or paleo autoimmune protocol,
AIP.
AIP. So my NP recommend that I start the AIP diet, and I start a supplement protocol that was very intensive. A ton of pills like vitamin D, vitamin A, zinc, vitamin E, lysine, glutathione. I'm trying to remember them all off the top of my head, but it was like every single supplement was an immune supporting supplement. And essentially what we were trying to do is take out everything that could possibly causing inflammation through the diet, and bumping up my immune system so that it would do its job and fight these viruses into remission. And so to just give a brief description of AIP, is there's books on it, like look it up. It's really intensive. It is not a diet that you like. It's not a lifestyle diet.
Yeah. It's something that you're going on to help heal your body heal.
Right.
For a period of time.
Most people only do it for 1 month. She wanted me to do it for at least 3. And it is, you take out everything, except for meat, fruits, and some vegetables. So there's even vegetables that you take out, like all beans, legumes, and nightshades like tomatoes and peppers, which this is to reference back earlier. What I said was the hardest thing that I eliminated was black pepper, like seasoning on your food. That's one of the things you take out. That was so miserable because I love pepper. So that was hard.
Pepper was harder than the wine.
It really was. And I even thought dairy was going to be really hard for me, or gluten. No, it was the pepper.
It was your black pepper.
Yeah. So for 3 months, I did this. And I just wanted to say, at the very beginning, when I got this diagnosis, in a way, I felt relieved that I had an answer, because I had been praying for healing for so long without even knowing what I needed to heal from. I just knew something was wrong with my body. And what the Lord gave me, he gave me a answer right after this diagnosis, right when I started AIP, because it was very intimidating to start this process of like changing your whole life in a very difficult way. And I was like, what if this doesn't work? What if I do all of this? This is so hard. And what if, like, it's very serious to have this virus chronic in your system for a long time. And I'm like, what if this doesn't work? And the Lord brought to my mind the story of Yeshua healing the blind man, but specifically the one that he put the mud in his eyes.
Mm.
So that came to my mind, and I immediately went and I read it. And it's in John chapter 9. And I'm just going to read it real quick
Mm-hmm.
and then share what he revealed to me through this. So, John chapter 9, and his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind? And Yeshua answered, neither this man sinned nor his parents, but he's blind so that the works of God might be displayed in him. So we must work the works of him who sent me as long as it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he said this, he spat on the ground and made the clay of spittle and applied the clay to the blind man's eyes. And he said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam. And he went away and washed, and he came back seeing. And I looked up what Siloam means right after I read this on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And it means sent. And what this impressed on me at this part in my journey is that healing is a miracle.
Mm.
And the Lord wanted me to have this miracle. And it doesn't always look like saying your sight will be healed, and that moment your sight is healed. What healing looked like for this blind man was a substance, a salve that Yeshua himself made from the DNA of the God of the universe and dirt from the earth, like a medicinal substance on his eyes. But it didn't stop there, because he could have just seen right there.
Mm-hmm.
It also took an action
Of
from
faith.
the blind man.
Yes.
It took faith in the words of this stranger that
Mm-hmm.
this is what you do if you want to be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And then think about that man, that he had some interim of that interaction and going to the pool, of Siloam, which could not have been easy when you were blind.
Oh, yeah. Somebody had to have either led him there, or if
Right.
he knew the way.
It took minutes or hours or maybe days. We don't know how long it took.
Mm-hmm.
But it took this physical substance from the Lord, and it took a action in faith from the individual for him to have his miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what the Lord told me he was doing. He wanted to do with me. He wanted to heal me. It was going to take a move from me. I was going to be sent to obtain my miracle.
Yeah. And it wasn't easy. You had to give up everything, and
Yes.
be specific and intentional about what foods you ate. And they were all real foods, right? They were meat and fruits and
Yes.
some vegetables. And that was it. You weren't eating McDonald's.
Exactly. And that's what I learned too, is if I learned one thing from being on the AIP diet, it's that this is the way that God created our bodies to eat.
Mm-hmm.
The world has become so corrupted that everything is against us to put us in a state of sickness,
Mm-hmm.
but our body is the miracle that wants to heal. And
Yes.
God created us to heal.
Yes.
He created our immune systems to fight for us.
And he created foods and herbs and all sorts of things to heal us. I looked up healing, and it's mentioned in the Bible over 30 times in the Bible. And one of my favorite verses that I came across when I was doing this research, and I'm taking this verse out of context because I'm only reading one verse, but in Ezekiel 47:12, fruit trees of all kinds will grow on both banks of the river. Their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruit fail. Every month they will bear fruit, because the water from the sanctuary flows to them. Their fruit will serve for food, and their leaves for healing. I
Yes.
don't know what kind of tree that this is specifically referring to without doing more research, but it's just one out of very many verses that talk about food and leaves and herbs for healing.
Yes.
So I thought that was interesting. And also, we're going to have Carrie on in a couple of weeks. She's going to talk about healing with the sun, or from the sun, from vitamin D from the sun. And in Malachi 4:2, it specifically says that about the sun of righteousness will rise with healing in its rays. And so I want us to dive into that a little bit more. But you're
Yeah.
right. Our body wants us to heal.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So we're like, I have plugged plenty in this episode. We're having Paula on next week and Carrie on the week after that to continue this conversation on nutrition and healing through food. So this was just a little glimpse of what I personally learned on this journey that I am so grateful for, because at the very end of it, after 3 months, and I got my blood work done again, the Lyme was completely gone, wasn't in my system at all. And the Epstein-Barr virus was no longer active.
It's
And
amazing.
when she told me those results, I just started crying, because it was like that message the Lord had given me 3 months before, that this is how he was going to heal me through a miracle. It was like right there, I had the blood work to show, and I was feeling much better. Like, I knew I was better. I knew I felt better. And right after I got off the phone call with her of my results, I went and took a pregnancy test, because I thought it was weird that I had started crying, and I had a positive pregnancy test.
It's amazing.
And so that, to me, of like, it became about healing my body. That's what I wanted more than anything.
Yeah.
And God did that for me and then exceeded it.
Yeah. That's
So,
amazing.
yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for sharing the rest of your journey with us, Ray. We're going to talk
Thank you
more
for
with Paula.
listening.
Yeah, keep listening. We're going to talk with Paula next week, and so you can hear more from her and her knowledge. But thank you all for being on this journey with us. If you'd like to follow along outside the podcast, you know where to go: Instagram, The Radiant Mission, Facebook, or our website, theradiantmission.com. And today I'd like to close us with 1 Corinthians 6, verses 19 and 20. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. Wishing you a radiant week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.